the show.
My pleasure.
I just sat in your talk. We were at the Functional Training Summit here in Munich 2018 this year. And actually, how many summits have you done?
So I think this is my 5th summit. I've been to all of them except last year. And it's interesting that they called after the last year and they said, man, we need you back. Everyone was saying there was something missing, and it was kind of the energy and actually the motivation. And that's what inspired me for the talk that we just had a few minutes ago.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. And actually, just a little anecdote, just before your talk right now, I met you and you were highly focused and you were in a state where I hardly could talk to you because we were trying to arrange the interview afterwards. And then it was so interesting to see that you stepped on stage and all of a sudden your whole behavior changed, your body language, you started sweating a little bit because you were so intense.
Yeah.
And generating so much energy that you could feel in the room and giving it to the people. And maybe let me start with that question.
Yeah.
Like when did you find out that you were good at motivating others?
Well, just even to say a point, for instance, when you had came to talk to me and I was so focused, it's interesting that you picked that up, that right before then, I knew I had an important job to do. We would have hundreds of people in the room, hundreds of people that need the information. I also knew there were a number of words I was trying to remember in German. There was a number of people that were counting on me to really inspire them. And man, and I knew I had an hour and 20-minute talk that I had to be so focused and prepared that I think that's an important thing that you just saw is one of my secrets has always been preparation. So I was very motivated to be so prepared that you see how I didn't want anything to break that focus minutes before I was presenting. So an interesting thing about that is I guess I'm internally motivated. And the reason is because I've learned my role as a motivator. That's why I'm here. And using the energy correctly is important. So you just got to see 2 versions of that, which is really neat, where most people don't see that. They just see me on the stage and then after. But what just happened there took a tremendous amount of work and preparation. Last night I was preparing. While I sleep at night, I'm still reviewing the presentation. And that's a big secret for anyone listening. If you want to do a great job, you have to put in the work too. So what just happened wasn't by accident. There was months of planning that went into that show.
You showed a video, I think, where it said that when opportunity meets preparation or something like that.
That's when great things happen.
Speech.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, that was what it was. It was so motivation. This could be a cool thing to discuss too. Is motivation is not by accident. See, it's very planned. So even the coaching speeches that you saw, those are planned. Those are scripted so that the person knows what they're trying to do. Just like tonight, we're trying to break the record for the biggest workout in Perform Better history.
Yes, I'm going to be there.
And that one I've been planning for months as well, and I'm nervous because I don't know how many people are coming. The room isn't as big as maybe we need it to be, so some things may not go to plan, but you'll see I'm going to be ready to fire everyone up. Like, it's going to be great.
What do you think in part is due maybe to your genetic makeup or to your, let's say,
I know what you're saying.
Biology that you just are able to generate that energy?
Well, here's what I would say. If we want to talk about motivation as nature versus nurture, I would say, like anything else, it's a combination. For instance, I've trained Olympic gold medalists and world-class athletes. Some of that is nature, their genetics, but then some of that is nurture, that you can improve someone in performance. I would say, was I always a motivator? No. When I had jobs that I didn't love, when I was doing things where I wasn't impacting many people, I wasn't that motivating. But I've always been a high energy guy, so I know I have a little of that in me genetically, but it was a combination of what I talked about today. You have to find what you love and be very passionate about it. And when you have that, you'll transfer more energy to motivate more people. But it helps me also to be a high energy type A personality to be able to have that combination. But I would say many of the people in the crowd, they are lower energy, not because of genetics, but just because of environment. And because you saw when I changed the environment, everyone was motivated. So everyone has the capacity to motivate someone else, whether you're a parent, it's not just fitness person, a parent, a coach, a coworker, a boss, but they have to reduce the fear. That's what I was trying to do today, was remove the fear and let people really go for it. And when we did that, everyone had more fun. Everyone was on more fire, but it took some work to do that. And so the short answer is, I would say, if it's nature and nurture, it's both, but everyone can improve their motivational skills. Anyone could motivate someone else if it was important enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you also said that you need to understand the wants and the why of the people. Mm-hmm. And what I've noticed, and that's really a personal question from me to you now, when people come to you and they say, I don't really know what I want. I lack clarity. Like I know I need to change something. Where should I start? How would you go about that?
To be honest, most of the time when people are coming to me for help, they do know they have an idea of what they want. For instance, if it's as simple as to lose weight or to build muscle, to get off medication, to beat a chronic disease, usually recover from an injury, there's usually something, right? But if someone were to say, I'm not sure, then I would continue the questions, right? So I would continue to interview them until we found what that was. And that used to happen a lot, even with some of the, what's interesting is some of the high-level athletes I used to train, you might think that they're always motivated, but many of them aren't motivated. Many, because they are so genetically gifted, they just find themselves at a high level, but it may not be what they love. And you have to help you have to help them find their motivation. And man, very interesting that I would do an exercise where I would take a piece of paper and I would give it to them and I would say, I want you to write down why you want to be a professional star or why you want to do this. And at first, many of the answers were always money or something. I would say, man, that's not enough. What's the real reason? And then they would come back with something more, but then we would ask more questions. And then the answers that started to happen were, auf Deutsch unglaublich. Like it would be, my family is still in the murder capital of the United States. I have to succeed so I can get them out. Another guy was, I've just had a child and we had Christmas and I had no presents for them. I can't let this happen again. I can't let this child down. And then they had motivation, and what I would do is, my secret was then I would take that thing that they gave me and this is what I would use to remind them all the time. So if the guy wasn't working hard, hey, your child's going to need shoes someday, your child's going to need a car someday, and then he would be back on track. Or hey, don't forget about your family, and what also used to work is if I couldn't get the answer out of them, I would go to their family, I would talk to their parents, I would talk to and you're going to get the answer, right? But if you don't get it with the first question, you have to ask more questions, and that's what I gave in the speech too, was you have to get really good at asking the right questions. And when they find the answer, because the answer is in there, they know it, they just sometimes maybe don't want to say it. But then when they find that motivation, man, it like we talked about, it makes everything easier, then they will overcome the pain, they will overcome the fear. But when people don't have a reason, the Grund, then maybe they don't do their best.
Yeah, I mean, what you said in the end, I think made a lot of sense to me, that success in a way trumps, significance trumps success.
Yeah.
So, and you told the story about Lou Gehrig, and that was quite inspiring because for him, it even extended his own lifetime what he gave back.
Oh, and even for the disease to be named after, there will always be significance. But what we were discussing for the listeners was eventually, because not everyone always understands. I didn't always understand it. When I was in my 20s, I thought success was money. When I was in my 30s, I thought it was how many people knew me. When I was, now getting later into my 40s, now I see it's how much can I give back? How many people can I help with what I do so that someday when I'm gone, I still have impact? And I think what's interesting is everyone will find this. That will be an eventual motivation for everyone. So, and how do I know this? Every person that I ask, so if I were to ask you, hey, do you think you'll have a gravestone someday? Like, you have like a gravestone when you're gone?
I aim for a fire funeral.
but you know what I mean? People sometimes, but something, there's going to be something
there will be something sure.
that to remember, right? Something to remember. And when I ask people, why will you do this? They say, well, so someone remembers. And so there is this motivation that everyone inside wants to do something of significance. But what I say is, why not do something bigger? Why not do something better than a rock or the urn or something? Why not do something incredible that becomes more? And I think everyone will find this, but that's, say now, not just for fitness, but that's how I motivate business leaders, different people that I work with that want to make a bigger impact. So motivation, whether it's for a small child to someone that wants to improve in fitness to someone that wants to have a real social impact with their business, the motivation is always there, but someone needs to help bring that out. And I think what we talked about today is it's a missing ingredient in fitness. It's a missing ingredient in homes. It's a missing ingredient in businesses, and that is now my mission to kind of spread some of that. At least getting people to understand what we talked about today, that the Verantwortung, the responsibility is to be able to do that. For instance, right now, whoever you are listening, I'm trying to motivate you a little bit with the information and make them a little better than they were before they listened to this, right? So, and if everyone had this idea, man,
I can only recommend to watch you live. That's a whole different experience. I think.
But today was special. Like, because I haven't been here in 2 years. Always give my best when I come to Germany. So it'll be German listeners also.
Yes.
So meine Mutter und mein Vater gelebt in Deutschland vor 4 Jahren und ich bin stolz, Deutscher zu sein. Right? Ich bin 75% Deutsch, and like I have this pride that I wanna, when I come here, like I wanna do something amazing to be a reminder. And my father, when I left, was very emotional because he doesn't travel anymore. He used to travel so much, and that's what inspired me, motivated me to travel. And when I was leaving, he said, "Man, I wish I could be going with you. I wish I could be in the suitcase. And so that came out a little today. Like I remember I said something. Something hit me with some. I got the Gansehaut was on my arms too, where it was like. But you see how I needed some motivation, like everyone does. Like so, that was my motivation. There was to do this great job. That I'm back. And.
Yeah, but I would say you were in a flow moment.
Yeah, definitely. I'll say this, I was so flowing, and that's what happens to me. It's pretty interesting. You could say too, motivation should take you to your flow moment. So you should be motivated to reach that, whether it's through something you do, your work, something else. And I hit it today. Like when I'm speaking, I don't know what's happening. I can't remember things I was saying. I don't know how I was pulling some of those words out auf Deutsch, because they were just it was like what you saw up there, that was flow. But at first it wasn't, because it was difficult. The crowd was a little, they were not motivated, but then as it started going, and it was, man, like I had to look down because I had no idea what time it was anymore, where it was at. And that obviously through athletics, and now I guess through speaking, is something that I would say if I were addicted to anything, it's the flow moment, where studying Zen philosophy for many years. I'm a black belt in judo. That was where I was trying to figure out ultimately how to spend as much time there as possible, know? And that was, today I spent an hour straight right there in the zone, So whatever anybody wants to call it, the zone, flow, the moment, wherever it was.
Pocket,
whatever. Yeah, it was there. And when that happens, man, people see it, like they know, so it was, because I don't know if everyone understood everything I was saying today, but they could feel it.
Well, your body language speaks for itself as well. And I can say the words made sense.
Yeah.
But in addition to your body language, I think even without the words, even if it was
muted, it would have hit.
You would have felt something.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, because you mentioned you're black belt in judo, for example, but in all the sports you work with, is there a particular athlete that you think is very different from the others in terms of motivation or in mindset?
I would say I talked about it during the speech, and it's interesting for anyone listening that I've worked at the highest level in the NFL, all the way down to young kids, and everyone needs motivation. But remember, I mentioned that the motivation is different. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I think as someone becomes more closer to professionals, maybe money motivates them more, or
more extrinsic
factors. You see less on sometimes the pure love, but you'll know the ones that have it, but it's not as often. Whereas the younger kids, it's more sometimes motivation just to get them to do something, Mm-hmm. But I would say in terms of different sports, I would say, because my other background was with mixed martial arts, so I trained many UFC fighters in the beginning. I was one of the first guys ever to work with these types of athletes. That's where Training for Warriors came from. And these guys made no money, you know. So in the beginning, there was no money. For many of them, still there's not much money unless you're one of the best of the best. And yet, how hard they would train, how much they would sacrifice, and everything that they would do for the art and for the combat, I would say those people needed the least motivation. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't an extrinsic, it was intrinsic what was really driving them. Whereas maybe some of the other guys, that are the higher profile guys I've trained that make, you know, tens of millions, and then sometimes, man, they don't want to do anything, you know. So it's so I would definitely say motivation. I'm having a breakthrough here. Motivation is inversely related to your passion, you know, and love. So think of it as like, if you have no passion for something, man, you're going to need so much extrinsic motivation. But if you have incredible passion for something, you don't need so much motivation because it comes from inside, you know, if that makes sense. So that would be the example. Is every sport they have it. There must be some football player here that, you know, in Germany that loves football so much he would play it for nothing. And then there'll be another guy, he's great, but man, if he doesn't get 20 million, he's not going to come to practice, you know? So that may be that. You see how there's two factors there, the motivation, but you know, what's inside here.
Do you think actually that with all the social media and everything, that the kids who grow up today, does anything change for them in terms of how they motivate themselves? Because what I witness as well is that when they hit that part where you said a couple of times, this is boring, but instead of going through that period of boringness, boredom, and then finding the creativity to change something, they have these different methods of reaching for the phone and going on Facebook. And
I would say the internet has changed things in many ways. A disturbing thing I just heard the other day was since 1999, suicide rates are up globally. You know, I forget what it was, 20%, something scary. And it was almost, they were coupling that with, that's exactly when the internet kind of began, you know.
Wow.
And meaning that people are, you know, one, maybe how they're comparing themselves to everything at all times, or just bad news or more news, or overwhelmed. But what I would say also is now, what we're saying in the States is the social media or the internet is now like for what smoking was for kids of my generation. Now it's where they get their dopamine rush, where they get their fix now is not from nicotine, it's from the phone. I need another like, I need another, somebody viewed my thing, I need interaction. And so there's this immediate gratification that you're talking about that has changed, where now if I'm not getting constant stimuli, I'm bored, you know, and so I don't have the proof behind it, but I would fear that maybe people aren't going to put in the energy and time into something else for the long haul as often, because they have so much immediate gratification through a virtual world that, remember, your brain can't tell that it's not real, you know. So I would say it's definitely going to make things harder. And now, hey, I have 4 daughters. And they're just getting into that. Like my oldest has now got a phone, and now I see she's spending much more time. But the younger ones, I haven't, you know, they're not on that yet, so I don't see it so much. But I definitely have seen a change now when she turned 14, 15, that now it's the phone and the different things. And it hasn't impacted her training, but I will say, but we limit the phone when there's training. So if there was phone and training, there probably would be no training, you know. So definitely there's an impact there. There's an impact with driving, you know, because she's now starting to learn to drive, and I'm terrified because just everyone's on their phone. So I think the phone will have some kind of big impact in the future that we'll know, but it's just starting right now. So
you have not developed any methods yet within your family to...
Well, she has such responsibility, so she's doing great, where if I thought it was a problem, or it was, you know, so if her grades were not good, if her sports were not good, if it was impeding on social life, but then I would say, man, I would throw the phone in the garbage. You know, we don't really need it, but I guess what it is we're not having a negative impact, but I can see how it could be, because I know other families that are, you know, that children that they're not doing athletics, or they're not doing well in school, but man, they're on this thing all the time, you know, and doing bad things, which my daughter has shown me. So it's there's for every positive that the technology could be, there will be some other things coming.
Certainly. Yeah. Martin, I read on your book, and I'm a basketball player, and I played for Boston University in college, and I got to ask, because on your book I read that you work also with the NBA sometimes, or with NBA
I used to train a bunch of players a while ago, but one in particular was my favorite story is, so I trained George Muresan, if you remember.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So he was the tallest guy in the NBA at the time, and man, not only incredible guy, but it was one of my biggest challenges as a fitness coach, because a 7'6" guy, I don't know it in meters, but I had to change everything to be able to, meaning you're not going to heavy squat a guy, so I had to find new methodology to keep him going, and because he was, then as his career was getting closer to the end, he was having a lot of physical issues, but still continuing to play, and so I always had a great time. The basketball guys, hey, they were always super hard workers, and man, incredible athletes, so. It was, very different athlete than, say, the American football, how you would train and different things. So that was always a lot of fun for me. But he was my favorite story of all of them.
All right. Actually, you have a lot of stories, and I wonder. I was asked by someone to ask you that. Are they all true? All the stories that you have?
Well, what do you mean, like about myself? Or
like the roller coaster story. Do you really do that at home with your family?
Yeah. So my daughters, I got that one from. My daughter this year in school take a theater class. So when I was building the presentation, I said, I need something for, like
to interact.
To interact and get them acting. And then, so they showed me the roller coaster thing. So if you saw, there was the guy doing the video behind me, my friend. So that's for my kids. So I want them to see how we did it, like that.
Very cool.
So I could even show you, I have my phone and here, well, I think I can even show you this. So my daughter, if it'll.
For all the listeners here, Martin is taking his phone out and showing me something.
So yesterday I wrote my daughter, I sent the picture and I said, tomorrow, we're rocking them in Germany. Tomorrow they're gonna, when I went, sing it, during the We Will Rock You. And she just,
awesome,
and she just laughed. So that's my daughter, Sophia. So they are a lot of my motivation now, where I want them to see what their dad does and that they hear the stories that someday they're going to be inspired to do some things too.
And my assistant Mark also said that you change your stories every time.
Oh, every time, yeah. So every speech is always new, which makes it very difficult. So, for instance, if I came back and gave the same speech, I believe everyone will say, I already saw that one. Could still be good, but so every year I challenge myself to have all new. So there wasn't one word in of the other 5 times that I've been here that was the same, and that puts pressure, because that speech that you saw, that took months and months to prepare to have that one incredible hour.
I still hope you keep that "We Will Rock You" element in there for some other speeches, because that one would be lost for.
No, well, meaning like. It doesn't always fit, the idea. Remember, so this is the first time I'm speaking about motivation. So in the years past, the first year I was here, I spoke about speed and agility. Another year was coaching, who it is to be a coach. It's always where I'm focusing. And now where I'm seeing the focus go is, at least in the US, which I feel we're always carving forward in fitness, it's motivation. That what I'm noticing when I look, because I get to remember at Training for Warriors, we have hundreds of facilities, not just in the US but around the world, and it's pretty interesting. But my learning curve goes like this, because I have access to the information from everywhere. So I get the ability to see trends faster. And one of the trends is that fitness is moving into the smaller spaces. Fitness, people are paying more, but they want not only more service, but again that. They want that connection. This is what they'll pay for. But then when I started to look within the connection was motivation. So that's where this concept came from.
And actually, you're in the business of motivating others, but where do you turn for inspiration? Or do you have someone that you look up to?
Yeah, for sure. I get this question a lot, and I'm very lucky. What I would tell everyone listening is, people have said before, you're the average of the 5 people or the 10 people you spend your time with. And other history on myself, I was on the U.S. bobsleigh team for a number of years. Mm-hmm. So one of my best friends is a guy named Todd Hayes. He not only won Olympic medals, but he coached Canada and the U.S. to many more medals. So he and I spend a lot of time together. And this guy, he has become one of the highest in the world in what he does. We're always bouncing ideas. Another close friend is Jim Miller. He's got the most fights in UFC history now. We are training partners for a decade now. Another guy is a guy, Jeffrey Gittimer, and he lives right where I live now in Charlotte, North Carolina. And he has the best-selling business book of all time, The Little Red Book of Selling. He's a Hall of Fame speaker. And this is a guy that, like, these people, not only they motivate me, but they will give me great feedback that I will take and improve with, So again, I consider myself lucky to be surrounded for many, many years by really great people. So the ultimate goal, if you want to be motivated, is surround yourself with people that are better than you.
Okay.
So for instance, if you wanted to be better at basketball, then surround yourself with guys that are better than you, and your game is going to improve. Whereas if you're better than everyone else, their game is improving. So I have a whole team, and I'm never afraid to always be open to taking an idea from anywhere, because even the speeches, the stories, all the things that I try to share, meaning not my stories, but the Lou Gehrig one or something, man, that it takes time and energy to find these ideas, and maybe it'll be one of my friends, and I'm talking, and they'll say, hey, this, or my kids, and it'll be like, hey, try this thing, and all of a sudden you've built this really cool thing, So definitely I definitely don't sit in my house by myself and come up with everything, so you need a good team.
No, that was a wonderful performance. Again, thank you for that one. And you also you came up with a book.
So I have 11 books. Yeah.
Well, recently, yeah, more books, but just the newest one just came out, I think.
Yeah. So the newest one was,
I guess,
the newest one was like last year. That was called The Book of Five Things, and it was pretty interesting.
Okay.
And it was just like we were talking about, 5 friends. What I had always heard was the brain, you can remember about 5 ideas or 5 numbers. When you go over it or under it, it's not as strong. So each week for almost 2.5 years, I would write a blog about 5 things. So say it might be like, hey, 5 things that motivated me in Germany, and I would write the 5 things, or 5 things that should help you with your fitness, 5 things that can improve your nutrition. And all of a sudden, after all that writing, people said, man, you have to compile this into a book. And that was the latest book. But I've done books on training.
You had 11 books.
Yes,
we had a couple.
Well, we have I think 3 or 4 that are produced auf Deutsch by here.
Exactly.
And that one is the Training for Warriors book, the Warrior Cardio book, the Ultimate Warriors workout book. So those were more training. Then there were some on philosophy, and the one Book of 5 Things is almost more motivation. So it's kind of always evolving. And I'm working on a new project now. One that I just released to help people become better speakers. So it's funny, as I started thinking more about motivation, I realized, hey, you have to have the training information, you have to have passion, but can you deliver? See how I was, like you said, my body language, the words I used, the things I did, that's a skill. And what I feel is every coach needs that too. So I just released a online product that we built over a year called Presenting Greatness, where I take people through my process, my creative process of what you just saw up there, how to do that, and so
where can you find that online?
So that's, if you go to presentinggreatness.com. So it just came out last week. We had just had a big launch, and man, hundreds and hundreds of people from all over the world have started. So
congrats on that.
So there's a lot of online things that, so people can check out trainingforwarriors.com too and find.
You always like to learn from the best from the ones that you actually
saw.
Yeah.
So there's so many things. So I'm always trying to continue to deliver more and more information out there. And
so that's what my next question was, and sort of towards the end of the podcast, because I know you have some other interviews left.
We're setting that record today at 5:30.
Exactly. But what is you just talked about what's next, but do you have a bigger why where you say, okay, my goal is I want to reach 1 million people and motivate them? Or
absolutely. So what I call it, and it's pretty interesting, my mantra is saving lives. And saving life means that not just like, hey, someone is drowning and I save them, but what is happening now in my Training for Warriors organization. Remember, there are tens of thousands of end users, or students, people using the program around the world. And every day I receive emails from these people, hey, I'm off medication. Hey, thank you for this program. I've lost this weight. Hey, I've built more muscle. I have my relationship back. I'm speaking to my kids again. And the stories are incredible, and each one of those I consider is like a life saved, And so this became the mission. So this year's mantra was to save 1 million lives, so because watch, say a person is off medication and now they have 20 more years with their children. So now maybe they don't have a horrific accident in front of them. Well, now those kids' lives are different too. And then, man, maybe those kids will have kids someday, and those are different. And so it's almost like dropping the rock in the pond and where the ripples go. Mm-hmm. Now I'm receiving the emails of where these ripples are going, and it's only that is now my motivation. So what do I see, or what is the goal? It's going to be to continue to impact more and more lives with my program, which is an extension of my philosophy, but our coaches are doing it, and just helping people, and it's because in the end, remember we talked about people will want significance. Usually that significance will be found in a way that you help more people, mm-hmm. And that is that's the mission every day. That was what today was. So why am I here? Because those 200 people, if each one only affects 1,000 on social media, that's 200,000 people that someone could get a positive message, and then there's another ripple, Mm-hmm. So and that's why I gave that was knowing that was the motivation, gives you the energy to stand up there on stage and go wild, which is what just happened.
Great. Okay, last question.
Yeah.
And I sort of stole that from Tim Ferriss, but if in Munich you could have a billboard and it said something, it could be in German or in English, what would it say?
Well, if I was going to say in German, one of the philosophies that my father gave me a long time ago, which I think could work for anything, would be Übung macht den Meister, mm-hmm. Man, whether you not saying about exercise for Übung, but practice, where, hey, if you want to be a better speaker, man, practice will make you the master. So that was what you just saw here today. Hey, if you want your nutrition to be better, then you have to practice. You have to do the work and continue to do it over and over again. And I think maybe people have forgotten this, that, like you said, with instant gratification now and being on the phones, man, it's not how it always works. That if you want mastery so you can have significance, then you have to do the work. And so many times people have forgotten that, like, hey, everybody that just saw my speech, they can't now just go be a great motivator. They have to practice that. They have to really work on those skills over and over again, and then they will have it and they will help more people. So that one, even though it's something that everybody always maybe says, but it's something to maybe another guy, an American guy bringing it here, could be the reminder.
It's a classic, and you don't have to come up with something completely new every time. So.
Which would be hard in German.
Martin, thank you.
My pleasure.